was just a little girl, only 8 years old, when her world was shaking, when the truth went cold. Her uncle's life was taken, no answers, just pain. And the ones who did it just walked away. But she never forgot, never let it fade. Now she's speaking up for the hearts that break, for the moms, the dads, the kids left behind. She's telling their stories, one case at a time. Cold case crystal, searching through the dark, shining a light, following every spark, turning silence into signs and gold, 'cause justice should never go cold. She don't know their faces, but she knows their pain. Standing up for the broken, again and again. It takes zero effort to be a good human being. This is cold case crystal, justice should never go cold.
Many of them as we can. But I want to get to Bradford Cohen on this one. Bradford, Steve Gonsalves is
Hello,
furious.
everybody.
Your thoughts on what I just told
It started a little bit early, so
In this type of case,
I went
not even
early
putting
because
aside
it started early. Just put a 1 in chat if you can hear the screen.
that it was this, TV and everybody's paying attention to it, high profile case, putting that all aside, just the fact that it is a murder case and the way that these murders happened and how many of them happened, to not sit down for a state attorney, to not sit down with a family face to face and either A, discuss it face to face about this plea and why it's a good plea or a bad plea, get their input, and then do whatever you're going to do. It's really shocking. I've just never seen it before. I've never seen a state attorney, and I've dealt with cases across the country, where the state attorney would not sit down in this type of case, a murder case, and ask the victims' families what they think about a plea. And even if he's going to ignore that, to tell them, hey, listen, this is what I'm going to do. I understand your position, but be a man, be enough of a man to at least sit down and look at them in the face and tell them why you're making this deal. In addition to that, they get nothing in this deal. So essentially, the state gets nothing. The state avoids a trial, but that's what they're there for. They charge the most ridiculous crimes in other cases and pick up cases where they shouldn't because of who the defendant is. That's my personal opinion, of course. But in this case,
I think that they're talking a little bit about what's going on, talking to this man about it. Like I said, I heard my computer make a noise, so I come in here and push live, regardless of it being scheduled for 15 till. So we're going to see what they say. I imagine that they still go to the courthouse and stream that at 1, but I didn't want to miss it in case it was a little early.
where you have a
And also let me know in the comments if you can hear the volume on it. Because I rushed to get in here to start this live, y'all.
of these slain kids, and that's what they were. They were kids just kind of starting their careers, starting their college careers. It really is a disgusting thing that can happen. Now, here's the question, and it's a big question. Depending on how these murders were carried out, depending on what weapon was used and where that weapon was made, is there a possibility that the feds could pick it up? That's a big question, because there are ways that the feds can look at what people would think would be state cases, and they could possibly bootstrap them into federal court. Like, I'm looking at the weapon that they suppose was used. It looks on there like it was made in New York. Making it in New York would be the Commerce Clause, right? You cross state lines for that. I don't know, because I don't know all the facts and circumstances of the case, but certainly there are ways that these type of cases can be brought in a federal forum, which I can assure you the family would be finding justice in a federal forum, more justice than they are in this state forum, where they got absolutely nothing for this deal. That he's not even doing an allocution is crazy to me. I've never heard of it.
Yeah, I find it odd with facts like this. And I spoke with a death penalty prosecutor yesterday who said, with facts like this, I wouldn't deal on this case. I would have all of the facts on my side. And he finds it unbelievable. Yes, he has a
Hey, Michelle.
Kohberger has a fifth.
Thank you for joining, honey. I see that they went live, so I came on in here and just pressed live because I'm afraid that they may actually go into the courtroom a few minutes before and we might miss something. And I didn't want to do that. So let's see what they had to say.
Amendment right to stay silent. But
by the way, let me know how my volume is.
they could have made allocution a part of this plea agreement. They chose not to. They could have said, tell us what you did with the knife. Who did you target and why? Because there's still a lot of questions here that could be answered. And the families, I think, deserve answers if they want those answers. And the feds, I think they could potentially charge in this
Thank you, Michelle. Does the video, is the sound on it okay?
case because of crossing state lines. I'm not a federal prosecutor, obviously, and have never been a federal prosecutor, but he crossed from Washington into Idaho to commit these murders. And there was some, there's also some potential, there were some suspicions about stalking using the internet and phones, things of that nature. We don't know if that actually happened, but there was a suspicion about that. Tara, your response to Steve Gonsalves, what I told you, he said, again, I just tweeted those clips out on X, posted them on X, and then Law and Crime will be reposting them as well.
Well, I can certainly understand why he would be upset, why the families or some of the families would be upset here. I mean, this is a really heinous crime that occurred. These were incredibly young victims. Certainly understand being upset about this result. At the same time, the prosecutors have a job, and that job isn't necessarily representing victims. The job is to represent the state. That's a really harsh reality, and it's very difficult. But it doesn't take away the emotion, and it certainly doesn't help in this type of situation where at least Steve Gonsalves disagrees with what we believe to be the arrangement or plea agreement that's supposed to occur today. His feelings about not being looped in into the discussions regarding plea agreement, that's certainly concerning. My understanding is that the possibility of a plea agreement was discussed early last week, but it wasn't until later that the families were notified that the plea agreement had been accepted. So difficult circumstances all around here.
Yeah, I think it is a difficult circumstance.
And we talked about this earlier in the other live when I showed the timeline, but maybe you weren't at that live. Let me know in chat. How do you feel about the plea agreement? I know we was talking earlier, and the DP charge, yeah, he could have got that. But, I mean, there's also a chance that he could have, the system fails too, that he could have got off. And life without the possibility of parole means he can never get out. And I stated this earlier, but I'll reiterate it here. Like with Charles Manson, he got the DP charge. And then the state changed laws years later and did away with the DP. So he ended up with life without, well, he had the possibility of parole, I think. I could be wrong on that. I know the girls did, but I mean, he's gave up the rest of his life with this plea. So no doubt in my mind he's guilty. You wouldn't do that if you wasn't guilty, or that's how I feel.
And the Chapin family, I should mention, Ethan Chapin's family, they are here in support of the plea agreement. Maddie Mogen's father, Ben Mogen, has told media outlets he is supporting the plea agreement. We haven't heard from Maddie's mother, Karen Laramie, yet on whether she is supporting it. Xana Kernodle's aunt is not in support of it, but we haven't heard from her father. So there are a lot of questions here. But, again, I've spoken to at least one prosecutor who's handled death penalty cases.
Exactly, Michelle. I completely agree with that statement. It takes so long to carry out these sentences. And like we said earlier, you can't even be sick when it comes up for your day. So your D-Day, which makes no sense considering what is to take place. I mean, it's wild to me.
Who said that, you would have a sit down, lengthy, face-to-face conversation about this typically before you would move forwards with something like this. And this would be handled in person, and it would be more than just a passing mention before moving forward with something like this in a case of this magnitude. And I know people around here, when I was on the plane last night and when I landed, were buzzing about this. So people there are very mixed and split reactions to this decision. We are going to take your questions now because that hearing will be starting in about 29 minutes. That's when it's scheduled, and we'll be bringing that to you live here on Law and Crime. And please continue to drop your questions in the YouTube chat, and Bradford, Tara, and I will get to all of them as soon as we can. Our first question is a super chat question. Thanks for the super chat, Curly Girl. Can the judge take the DP off the table and still have the trial? Tara, I think that would be unlikely, but could the judge strike the death penalty and still order a trial?
No, that's not what we have today that's going to occur. What is likely to occur today, if it's indeed a plea change, is the parties, one or both, will put what the plea agreement is on the table. The judge will then engage the defendant in a plea colloquy, which is basically a conversation to make sure that any plea that he's entering or may enter is knowing and voluntary, that it's not he's not under the influence of anything, that he hasn't been coerced into making it. So the agreement is what it is, and so long as it's knowingly, the entry of a guilty plea is knowingly and voluntarily made with the advice of counsel.
Also, I want to make this point since she is saying this. They also do that in TPR cases, you all. And we see that out there on other cases. But the judge also does that in TPR case. He makes sure that they're not on anything that's influencing their judgment if they sign over their rights, if they voluntarily do it.
Then the judge will accept it and will move forward to sentencing.
Tara, what is your feeling on why Bill Thompson wouldn't require or make, as part of the plea agreement, make it contingent upon him pleading guilty, like make it a requirement? Yes, he has a Fifth Amendment right, but you're willing to plead guilty and go to prison for the rest of your life. Why wouldn't Bill Thompson say, tell us where the knife is and tell us what happened?
Well, we don't know whether he did or not. We don't have the details of the plea agreement. We have a general understanding of what we believe the plea agreement is. We'll likely be hearing more of the details of that plea and what was negotiated between the parties on the record today. They will have to disclose that to the court.
And let me just say, there is a side of this that I hope does not happen, but we have seen this so many times. This piece of crap on TV, on your screen right now, has admitted to unaliving 4 young adults that were in the prime of their life at college trying to make something out of themselves. So what I hope don't happen is you have every reporter under the sun going into this prison, doing interviews and trying to make him famous. I say when somebody does something like this, they ought to be iced out. I mean, don't put them in the news no more. Don't do documentaries over them. If you do a documentary on behalf of the family, change their name. Let them be forgotten about. Don't make them famous. That's my opinion.
And so there may have been a component about, giving up certain information, but right now we just have very limited information as to the conditions of this plea.
Bradford, our next viewer question comes from NR. NR asks, is it a coincidence that he pleads right after the DoorDash driver is exposed as a potential witness? And this is the woman that was captured on body camera during a traffic stop, totally unrelated to this case. It was she was pulled over for DUI. She was under the influence, and she said, I have PTSD.
I completely agree, Michelle. I think that's where people make mistakes, and you get like he was obsessed with serial killers. I think it was BVK. Is that the one he was obsessed with? And so to him, I mean, this is my opinion. It's alleged. It's everything that I'm going off of. It's very public knowledge. Everybody can go and look it up yourself. But it did seem like he was very obsessed with serial killers. So it makes me wonder if this ain't just what he wanted. If they show up and do interviews with him, and we know they have in the past. We've got those interviews of Ted Bundy, Charles Manson. It's Jeffrey Dahmer. And that's why we know their name now. So I think that when they do stuff like that, they ought to blur out their face, change their name, and let it be. Because this right here is what he's known for. From everything that I've saw, he was a loner before this happened. Nobody knew Bryan Kohberger. Let's be real. And then he goes and does this horrendous crime. And no doubt you will have your reporters up there doing interviews, doing documentaries. And I'm sorry, but I don't think the family should have to see that. If they choose to do a documentary or a movie or something, I say leave his name out of it. Change it.
Because my husband was killed right in front of me years ago, and I'm the DoorDash driver. I have to testify. I saw Bryan. This
would point towards his guilt. And when you have the death penalty on the table, if there's always discussions to see if there's some sort of settlement or negotiation you can make with the state attorney's office when the death penalty is on the table. There's always discussions of that, usually throughout the case, depending on obviously the evidence that is in a case. In this case, I would imagine that they've been trying to get the death penalty off the case from day one. And I don't think this in itself, this one witness was like, okay, we got this one witness, let's call it a day and try to make a deal. I don't think that's true. And if he does not give an allocution, which all roads are pointing to Rome here, that he's not going to give an allocution, he's not going to say where this knife is. The question to answer is why the state would not require that. And that's my guess is because they're weak. I've never seen a state attorney's office that was so desperate to make a deal that they did not say, hey, listen, you have to do an allocution. You have to tell us at least where the knife is. You have to do something to get this deal.
See, Michelle, that's right there is what I'm saying. That I think that we need to rethink how we do these, because I think that's the reason we have people that mimic other serial killers and do stupid stuff like this, because they, other than what he's done here, nobody would have known about him. That's sad but true. I'm going to get it back up to real time because I don't want to miss if they come in early. Well, and in real time, they're doing nothing. Okay, well, we'll back it up some then.
A better idea, a more clear picture once we start this hearing.
Yeah, we will. And that hearing is going to start just in about 20 minutes. We are going to wrap up our coverage for now with me, but stay with us, everybody. And please keep dropping your questions in the live chat. Stay right here with us on this live stream, because we will be taking you into that courtroom here, into Judge Hippler's courtroom, as soon as this hearing begins. So stay with us and watch it. And then I will be back after the hearing ends. We'll have more guests and more great analysis and reaction to what happens in court. So I'll be up in court. I will come back. We will talk about all of it and unpack all of it and tell you what everybody has to say. So Bradford Cohen, thank you so much for being with me. Tara Malik, thank you for being with me as well. We will be back. You've been watching Law and Crime. I'm Anjanette Levy, coming to you live from the Ada County Courthouse in Boise, Idaho. I'll see you soon.
Okay, and if you wasn't here earlier, there is a timeline of the event that, because I was going to cover this at 11, it was my understanding that's when they would be going live. Found out it was going to be at 1 o'clock, so decided that I was going to leave that timeline there and then come back and do this. But at the beginning of this, I saw where one of the parents was on there. I think it's the Gonzalez family. We'll listen to that while we're wait. Okay, that was weird. Come on. Okay. I think it was right around in here. It was right at the beginning. I was thinking, oh my God, what am I missing? Where is it? Well, I thought it was at it. No, right here is where I jumped on live. So
betrayed, and all of the families have been betrayed by the system, by the prosecutor in this case. Here, we ran over and spoke with him. I tried to get him to come back over. He is livid, absolutely livid. He said, I am not going in that courtroom. I am getting out of this zoo.
Okay, let's see who said that, because I don't want to speculate. I think I know who that might have been.
Details for you. I just hopped back into the seat. Steve Gonsalves, the father of Kaylee Gonsalves, he walked in during our quick break and walked in with his family into the courthouse. And then he came walking back out and he gathered here. We ran over and spoke with him. I tried to get him to come back over. He is livid, absolutely livid. He said, I am not going in that courtroom. I am getting out of this zoo. I can't do this. The rest of his family will be in the courtroom, but he and I believe one of his sons, but it was hard for me to tell, walked across the court or across the street here, away from the courthouse. He doesn't want to sit in there. He feels betrayed. He wanted a jury trial. He wanted the truth to come out. He wants Bryan Kohberger to have to allocute and tell what happened, whether anybody else was involved, why he did this. He wants the whole truth. Of course, Bryan Kohberger has the right to remain silent, and as part of this plea agreement, he is not going to be required to do any of those things. He feels that he's been betrayed, and all of the families have been betrayed.
Now, right there is where I disagree with this plea agreement. Because us as the public we don't have to have that information. But if the family wants it, then I say it should be part of the plea agreement. And that is where they could speculate, maybe for example, maybe Madison's family may want it. But then say Ethan's family don't. Then he could be, in my opinion, I think that they should make him tell the families that want to know. Why does he get to remain silent? His rights are gone. I'm sorry. He can't vote. Now I'm ranting. Sorry.
Betrayed by the system, by the prosecutor in this case, because he's not going to get the answers that he feels that he needs in order to grieve and move forward. So I got a video of that on my phone. I'm going to be tweeting that out. We'll try to get that up for you here so we can take a look at that. That hearing where Bryan Kohberger is expected to change his plea to guilty in exchange for 4 consecutive life sentences is going to start in about 37 minutes now, and we'll be bringing that to you live. Please continue to drop your questions into our chat. We'll get to as many of them as we can. But I want to get to Bradford Cohen on this one. Bradford, Steve Gonsalves is furious. Your thoughts on what I just told you that he said, and this plea agreement and how it was reached within days, and no real face-to-face in-person meeting with the families about this. As far as we know, it sounds like it all took place over Zoom.
Sure. So when it comes to these type of cases, it is outrageous, to be quite honest. It doesn't matter if you're a defense attorney, if you're a state attorney, if you're a civil attorney, you know that individuals.
Yeah, they said that in this stream. And that's why I said that if they want to know, at the bare minimum, what happened, when was, in the words of the Gonzalez family, when was the beginning of the end for their kids, then I think that they should have set up something where he had to tell them personally, even if it isn't in a courtroom in front of everybody. That's just my little hillbilly thought on it, though.
Need to be contacted. The fact that in this type of case, not even putting aside that it was this, TV and everybody's paying attention to it, high profile case, putting that all aside, just the fact that it is a murder case and the way that these murders happened and how many of them happened, to not sit down, for a state attorney to not sit down with a family face to face and either A, discuss it face to face about this plea and why it's a good plea or a bad plea, get their input, and then do whatever you're going to do. It's really shocking. I've just never seen it before. I've never seen a state attorney, and I've dealt with cases across the country, where the state attorney would not sit down in this type of case, a murder case, and ask the victims' families what they think about a plea. And even if he's going to ignore that, to tell them, hey, listen, this is what I'm going to do. I understand your position, but be enough of a man to at least sit down and look at them in the face and tell them why you're making this deal. In addition to that, they get nothing in this deal. So essentially, the state gets nothing. The state avoids a trial, but that's what they're there for. They charge the most ridiculous crimes in other cases and pick up cases where they shouldn't because of who the defendant is. That's my personal opinion, of course. But in this case, where you have a murder case and the judge is denying every single motion the defense is making, and it, for all intents and purposes, it looks like, and there is no slam dunk, but it looks like this case is one of the cases where, you're not going to have trouble at trial. To give up the death penalty and get nothing in return, the only thing they get in return is not going to trial. It's really disgusting, to be quite honest with you. Listen, I'm looking for words to describe it. I understand this father.
And I understand that, because I'm mixed on this. The more I hear about this plea deal, I do think that he ought to, let me make this real quick clear. I don't give a crap about his Fifth Amendment. I think he ought to have to tell the family. I think that he ought to have to stand up and say, I am guilty of doing this. Not sit there silently while a lawyer gets to talk to him or talk for him. I mean, I can see Stephen Gonzalez's point on this. Now, like I said, as far as the DP, laws in states change all the time. But at the very least, he should have to tell that family why he did it and answer their questions. They shouldn't have to go a lifetime with unanswered questions.
Of a slain child, and the individuals, the families of these slain kids, and that's what they were. They were kids just kind of starting their careers, starting their college careers. It really is a disgusting thing that can happen. Now, here's the question, and it's a big question. Depending on how these murders were carried out, depending on what weapon was used and where that weapon was made, is there a possibility that the feds could pick it up? That's a big question, because there are ways that the feds can look at what people would think would be state cases, and they could possibly bootstrap them into federal court. Like, I'm looking at the weapon that they suppose was used. It looks on there like it was made in New York. Making it in New York would be the Commerce Clause, right? You cross state lines for that. I don't know, because I don't know all the facts and circumstances of the case, but certainly there are ways that these type of cases can be brought in a federal forum, which I can assure you the family would be finding justice in a federal forum, more justice than they are in this state forum, where they got absolutely nothing for this deal. That he's not even doing an allocution is crazy to me. I've never heard of it.
Yeah, I find it odd with facts like this. And I spoke with a death penalty prosecutor yesterday who said, with facts like this, I wouldn't deal on this case. I would have all of the facts on my side. And he finds it unbelievable. Yes, Kohberger has a Fifth Amendment right to stay silent, but they could have made allocution a part of this plea agreement. They chose not to. They could have said, tell us what you did with the knife. Who did you target and why? Because there's still a lot of questions here that could be answered. And the families, I think, deserve answers if they want those answers. And the feds, I think they could potentially charge in this case because of crossing state lines. I'm not a federal prosecutor, obviously, and have never been a federal prosecutor, but he crossed from Washington into Idaho to commit these murders. And there was there's also some potential, there were some suspicions about stalking using the internet and phones, things of that nature. We don't know if that actually happened, but there was a suspicion about that. Tara, your response to Steve Gunn.
Okay, it shouldn't be very long that they'll be starting. Again, I'm very, very conflicted on this plea deal. I see some points of it, some I don't. I think it's unreal how much that they can just disregard what some of the family want. And like I said, if they all don't want it, that's fine. But there is ways of being able to, I would hope, ways to be able to follow some of the family's wishes. Because, like I said, that's questions that they're going to have for the rest of their life if it isn't answered. He does have a Fifth Amendment right, but that doesn't mean you can't make it a part of the plea deal. Then he would have a choice, talk or face the... Yes, exactly, Michelle. And I know I may have sounded harsh, But when they made this plea deal, they could have made that an exception to the plea deal. I mean, but for the family to get nothing, and I did not know that the judge could actually rule against this plea deal, but from what they were saying, it sounds like he can. So I really wonder what they actually say about it, if I'm being honest. I wonder if he'll speak or... Okay, just a second. Which I imagine he won't speak. If he ain't made to speak, a coward won't speak. Let's be honest. But now I stand firm on this. I do not think that they ought to make... If he makes that plea deal today, then I think his name should not be mentioned no more. Let him be the nobody that he was before. The judge never has to agree to a deal made by lawyers. See, that's what I thought. But just a minute ago, they acted like that wouldn't really be a thing, that the judge wouldn't agree to it. He will probably have the right to speak at the sentencing hearing when the victim impact statements will read. Yeah, and I'd say if they don't require him to speak, he won't. I mean, they can require him to tell what happened. It happened in the Chris Watts case. But when people speak, they don't always tell the truth. We know Chris Watts is, and from this point on, I'm calling him CW, but he's changed his stories 100 times. Oh, it looks like we got 1 minute, you all. I hope they do say that in order to agree. I hope the judge says, in order to do this plea deal, you have to tell the family what you've done, or at least the members that want to know. The general public, we don't got rights to crap, but that family does. I think he will speak, but I don't think he will tell why or what happened. He will probably try to torture the families with his words, sadly. This is a bad situation altogether. I know people online have been very invested in this case, and like I said, we'll probably never get the why and how and was somebody involved. And you've got to think, if somebody was involved, who would you go to prison for the rest of your life without the chance of getting out to cover for? And I think it is kind of strange that after the delivery driver come out with that video when she said she had to be a witness in this case, that there's a plea deal. Look at what Murdoch said during his statement. Yeah, that was, and that's a botched. I foresee him getting another trial. I could be wrong. I've been wrong before, but I remember when this happened, my number one question was, how in the world did he do that? It was almost like, it reminded me of Amityville Horror, because everybody there was killed in their sleep and nobody woke up. Which we know some of the victims did have defense wounds. So that tells me, no, they wasn't all asleep. Just a second, y'all. Okay. All right. Well, it says it's 11:02 Mountain Time there. How long do we have to wait here? Oh. Yeah, and there was the Papa Rogers thing. I'm looking at the comments on the side here. Plea hearing to start at 11 a.m. Mountain Time, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Well, it's 1:04. Then start. I'm sorry, I'm impatient. Anybody know how the Diddy verdict went? I didn't really get to watch it. Yeah, I know that. Yeah, it never starts on time. I see in the comments, though, I'm not the only one getting impatient. I thought this judge was always on time, somebody says. Somebody says, in the end, BK got what he wanted, notoriety. And everybody in the comments is wanting him to explain why he done it. Like I said, we are not entitled to anything, but this family is. Only guilty on 2. Are you kidding? How long did he get for those 2 charges, Michelle? Or has he served it already? I'd say everybody and their mother is streaming this right now. I wish it would start. Nope, I'm furious. I don't think they sentencing has happened. Okay. See, and that, like I said, I didn't get to watch it, but that's a prime example of what can happen when it goes to trial. You never know. And look at all these people out here that's been defending BK. Look at all of them. You never know when you got a nut on the jury. Well, it's 1:07. They could start anytime. Let's see if Court TV may have it. Let's see here. Was that where I was yet? No. We'll go back and forwards. So they haven't started yet. Oh no. And they're not really talking about the trial in there. I guess I could use this too. Let me see here. Which I got it in my description, but seems like a lot of people was wondering why they're late. I've seen a lot say that this judge is never late. And then there's somebody talking about the Papa Rogers thing. How their chat's going way too fast for me to understand. And somebody says, honestly, I don't think a jury would have gave him the DP. See, that is the risk that would have been ran and him getting off, period. Somebody said exactly what Michelle said in this chat. Court's never on time. And I'm just going back between the two because one may start before the other does. If you're just coming in, we're just waiting for it to start. They're running late, looks like. Okay. Let me see here. See if Nightbot shows up. Sometimes he goes on strike and don't even work. Well, there you are, boy. To the wood chipper you go. They have to get him there and into court. Yeah. At least they can get him transferred. Michelle knows what I'm talking about without me going into detail. But I will say this. If somebody was almost 15 minutes late to work, they would probably lose their job. I'm going to let it run. I'll be right back. I'm going to go get something to drink. Check on my babies. I'm back and I see they're not. Well, I see there's a video on YouTube that says Kohberger's former prosecutor wonders if she inspired him. Kohberger's former prosecutor speaks out. There's another one that says Idaho College, and that was one day ago. Family of murder victim speaks or breaks silence for the first time. Will judge accept Bryan Kohberger's plea deal? That's News Nation. They was the one that, I mean, this video they have.
It will come to order. The Honorable Stephen Hitler, presiding judge. Be seated.
Finally.
It will come to order. The Honorable Stephen Hitler, presiding judge. Be seated. All right, this is CR 0124316665. Defendant is present in custody with counsel Ms. Thompson, Ms. Jennings, and pardon me, Ms. Taylor, Ms. Massoff, and Ms. Barlow. The state's present with Mr. Thompson, Mr. Horwitz, Ms. Jennings, and Mr. Nye is here as well. Am I missing anybody?
Ms. Allen is here as well.
Ms.
Your
Allen
Honor.
is here as well. Very well, thank you. All right, we are here today to entertain a change of plea. Before I start, I want to address some issues of concern and otherwise. First, I appreciate everybody in attendance today being on their best behavior. Please, no outbursts or demonstrations. Any such conduct will result in immediate removal and may result in an inability to attend further court proceedings in this case. I want to point out that there have been calls by some for the public to contact me and my office in an attempt to influence my decision-making in this case. This has been extraordinarily disruptive for court staff and the ability for them to get work done, not only in this case, but in other cases where defendants are entitled to have their cases processed, and frankly, as important, if not more so, for victims to have their cases processed in those cases. It's also highly inappropriate. A court is not supposed to, and this court will never, take into account public sentiment in making an opinion regarding its judicial decisions in cases. Courts should, and I always will, make decisions based on where the facts and the law lead me, period. I have not read any of the numerous messages, nor listened to any of the numerous voicemails, that have been sent to me and my staff. Those have all been forwarded to security and, where appropriate, to law enforcement. I ask that you not continue to mount such campaigns or to send me information like this, because again, it is not appropriate and frankly not something I would take into account when deciding a matter in a case like this. I also want people to understand some very basic concepts about the ideas of separation of powers, what the court's duties are, and what the duties and the rights of the executive, or in this case, the prosecuting attorney, is. The executive, the elected prosecutor, is the sole authority in deciding
agree,
what
Michelle.
charges to pursue, including whether, as well as what penalties to ask for, and what penalties to pursue, including the death penalty. This court cannot require the prosecutor to seek the death penalty, nor would it be appropriate for this court to attempt to do that. This court, in considering a plea agreement, if it were to reject this plea agreement, cannot force the state to seek the death penalty. My role and power in considering a plea agreement is extremely limited. My role is to ensure that the defendant's plea is given freely, voluntarily, and intelligently. If those things are met, I can only reject a plea, such as the one in this case, where I'm not being asked to agree to the sentence in advance. I can only reject it, for example, if the defendant does not meet or admit to all of the elements of the crime. That is, I can ensure what is called a factual basis to the plea. Finally, I want to offer my apologies to all the families, including the victims' families, the families of the defendant, for the short notice for today's hearing, and I'm sure what must have been the hurried efforts to get here. I, like most everyone else, learned of this plea agreement Monday afternoon and had no inkling of it beforehand. Prior to that time, I was under the belief that this case was proceeding to trial, as had been indicated, and my staff and I were busy continuing to work on preparations to have potentially 10,000 citizens of Ada County come to jury duty starting in mid-July, with the questionnaire process in mid-July. It was, once I learned of the defendant's decision to change his plea in this case, it was important that I take the plea as soon as possible because of the extraordinary administrative efforts that were otherwise attendant to the process of this, getting this trial potentially underway on time, and including the significant process of bringing, again, potentially up to 10,000 jurors to come in and fill out juror questionnaires prior to the beginning of the voir dire process. And so it was important that we, if we're going to go down this road, do so expeditiously so that we can avoid those costs and expenses associated with that. Otherwise, if it was not going to result in a plea, or if for some reason the plea were to fall through today, that we could continue diligently towards trial at the time specified. And so that obviously required that we act quickly. And so some folks may have not had the amount of time that we would otherwise allow for them to travel here. And so again, I apologize for that. I want to make people aware that during the hearing, if you are to leave the courtroom for any reason, you will not be readmitted during the hearing. Also, when we finish the hearing this morning, I ask that the public and media wait in their seats until the victims' families and the defendants' families and others are escorted out of the courtroom before you start to leave. Finally, I want to acknowledge the trial court administrator and her staff, the Ada County Sheriff, and the Ada County 4th District Marshal Service for the huge lift that they've accomplished in preparing for and orchestrating this hearing today, as well as to all the security attendant today that you see, and some of whom you, many of whom you don't see, with less than 48 hours notice. And so I appreciate the hard work that they've been doing. Frankly, some of them while they were on some vacation prior to the trial starting and had to call that short. And so I appreciate very much their professionalism and dedication. All right. That said, let's move to the business of today. I understand the state and the defense have reached a plea agreement in this case. For the record, I have a written plea agreement which indicates in sum, the defendant will plead guilty to all 5 counts in the indictment, burglary, felony, and first-degree murder, 4 counts. The state and the defendant stipulate, that is, that the defense is not free to argue for a lesser sentence at sentencing to the following. The defendant on the burglary charge will be sentenced to 10 years fixed, and that the defendant on counts 2 through 5, the 4 counts of first-degree homicide, on each count would receive a fixed life sentence, all 5 of those counts to run consecutive to one another. Defendant, as part of the plea agreement, waives his right to appeal, as well as his right to appeal the sentence and his right to seek leniency or reconsideration of the sentence under Idaho Criminal Rule 35. This is not a Rule 11 agreement, meaning the court is not bound by the plea agreement and could impose a different lawful sentence at sentencing. The stipulated agreement between the parties is the maximum on each count. So theoretically, the only thing the court could do would be a lesser sentence at sentencing. But the defendant is not free to ask the court to do so under the plea agreement. Are there any other material terms of the plea agreement that the parties would like to make? Obviously, the plea agreement, the written plea agreement will speak for itself and be part of the court record.
Not from the state, Your Honor. Thank you.
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right, very well. All right. Ms. Taylor, have you had sufficient time to discuss this case and all of its ramifications with your client?
I have, Your Honor.
Have you discussed fully with him his rights, defenses, and possible consequences to him of the guilty plea?
Yes, Your Honor.
Have you been able to do all the discovery you feel necessary?
Yes, Your Honor.
And have you informed your client of the importance of providing the court truthful and accurate answers in taking this plea today?
I have.
Have you apprised your client of any and all offers and counter offers and answered his questions about those?
Yes,
Do you consent to the entry of the plea today?
I do.
All right, Mr. Kohberger, I need to ask you some questions this afternoon, or I guess it's this morning still. I do this to ensure that you so that I am assured that you understand the nature of the charges to which I understand you're going to plead guilty, as well as the possible consequences to you of your guilty pleas. I want to make sure your plea is given voluntarily, and I want to make sure that you actually committed the crimes to which you're pleading guilty, because I don't want you to plead guilty to a crime you didn't commit. If you attempt to plead guilty today, but for some reason I don't accept your plea, then it is possible that your statements today could be used against you later at trial. Do you understand that?
Yes.
All right, thank you. And now while you're standing, actually, why don't you take the oath from the clerk?
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give in the matter not being before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
All right, and Mr. Kohberger, just to make it easier, you don't need to stand when you speak to me. I appreciate the sign of respect, but for convenience, you can remain seated, all right? Before I start asking you questions today, have you consumed substantive questions. Let me ask you, have you consumed any alcohol, drug, or other intoxicating substance that would impair your ability to understand or exercise reasonable judgment?
No.
You feel like you are thinking clearly today?
Yes.
All right, I want you to understand what the possible penalties are for each of the crimes to which I understand you're going to offer a guilty plea today. They include on count 1, the burglary, a fine of up to $50,000 and a period of incarceration of up to 10 years in the state penitentiary. You may be required to pay restitution to any victims of the crime. Count 2, 3, 4, and 5 for first-degree murder. The consequences include a fine of up to $50,000, a period of incarceration of life imprisonment, which is a requirement of a sentence, that it be a life sentence with a mandatory minimum sentence of at least 10 years on each of those counts. In addition, you would be potentially responsible for a fine of up to $5,000 to each of the victims of your crime to be enforced in the form of a civil judgment to operate as additional punishment. This is in excess of any restitution or fines that the court could order. And again, you may be required to pay restitution to the victims of the crime. You would be required to provide, as to counts 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, a DNA sample and a right thumbprint impression, and potentially pay for analysis of those samples. You would lose any right to possess, purchase, or carry a firearm, the right to serve on jury duty, the right to hold public office, and the right to vote. Do you understand the charges and all those possible consequences?
Yes.
You've heard the plea agreement that I talked about today. Do you agree with that plea agreement?
Yes.
And do you understand the nature of the charges that you've been charged with that I understand you're going to plead guilty today to?
Yes.
As I indicated, I'm not bound by the plea agreement, but the plea agreement is for the maximum on each count. Do you understand that I'm not bound by the plea agreement?
Yes.
Has anyone promised you that I would be lenient or easy on you if you pled guilty?
No.
Has anyone threatened you or anyone close to you to get you to plead guilty?
No.
Has anyone other than the state's agreements with respect to the plea agreement, has anyone promised you anything in exchange for your plea agreement?
No.
Has anyone told you to be untruthful in answering my questions today?
No.
Has anyone offered you a reward of any kind other than the plea agreement in order to get you to plead guilty today?
No.
Are you pleading guilty because you are guilty?
Yes.
And counsel, obviously there have been a number of motions filed to suppress evidence in this case. Other than those filed, are there any other motions that you felt were available with respect to Rule 12?
No, Your Honor.
And Mr. Kohberger, you understand that by entering the guilty plea in this case, you would be giving up your right to appeal any decision this court made, as well as your sentence.
Yes.
Have you had enough time to decide whether or not to plead guilty?
Yes.
Are you pleading guilty freely and voluntarily?
Yes.
Given your choices, do you believe it's in your best interest to plead guilty?
Yes.
Have you discussed fully the matter of pleading guilty with your attorney, and are you satisfied with the advice you've received?
Yes.
Has your attorney advised you to your satisfaction about what your rights are, what your defenses may be, and what the possible consequences to you of your guilty plea are?
Yes.
Has your attorney done everything you've asked them to do?
Yes.
Are you satisfied with their representation of you?
Yes.
I have received a written guilty plea advisory questionnaire that is purported to be filled out by you. Did you fill that document out?
Yes.
Did you understand the questions that you answered in this document?
Yes.
And are the answers that are outlined in this document your answers?
Yes.
Are those answers truthful?
Yes.
Did you sign the document?
Yes.
And this document outlines many of the rights that you have in this case. Should you not plead guilty, did you understand those rights?
Yes.
They include a right to a jury trial. Do you understand that?
Yes.
They include a right to the presumption of innocence. Do you understand that?
Yes.
You have the right to require the state to prove your guilt as to each element beyond a reasonable doubt. Do you understand that?
Yes.
They include a right to confront your accusers and cross-examine witnesses presented by the state, including by utilizing the subpoena power of the court to accomplish that. Do you understand that?
Yes.
You understand you would have a privilege against self-incrimination and a right to remain silent, meaning you would not be compelled to testify if you did not wish to, had you not pled guilty.
Yes.
You understand you're giving up that privilege and those rights that I've just outlined by pleading guilty.
Yes.
All right, I want you to understand what the state would have had to have proven at trial had you, to the crimes that you're pleading guilty to, had you, if you didn't plead guilty. Let me find the document. Hang on a second here. All right. So as to count one burglary, the state would have to have proven that on or about November 13, 2022 in Latah County, Idaho, you unlawfully entered a residence located at 1122 King Road in Moscow, Idaho, with the intent to commit the felony crime of murder. As to count two, the state would have had to have proven that on or about that same date in Latah County, Idaho, you did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice aforethought, kill and murder Madison Mogan, a human being, by stabbing Madison Mogan, from which she died. As to count three, the state would have had to have proven that on that same date in Latah County, at that same address, you did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice aforethought, kill and murder Kaylee Gonzalez, a human being, by stabbing her, from which she died. As to count four, the state would have had to have proven that on or about that same date in Latah County, Idaho, you did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice aforethought, kill and murder Xana Kernodle, a human being, by stabbing her, from which she died. And then as to count five, also murder in the first degree, that on or about November 13th, 2022, in Latah County, Idaho, you did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice aforethought, kill and murder Ethan Chapin, a human being, by stabbing him, from which he died. Do you understand those things the state would have had to have proven?
Yes.
And do you understand that by pleading guilty, the state no longer has to prove those things because you're admitting those things are true?
Yes.
I want to also make for the record, the defendant has provided with the guilty plea advisory form a document entitled Written Factual Basis that purports to have the defendant's signature dated 1 July 2025. Did you sign that document?
Yes.
And did you agree with the written factual basis that is included there?
Yes.
And then let me ask you, did you, on November 13th, 2022, enter the residence at 1122 King Road in Moscow, Idaho, with the intent to commit the felony crime of murder?
Yes.
Did you, on November 13th, 2022, in Latah County, state of Idaho, kill and murder Madison Mogan, a human being?
Yes.
And did you do that willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, and with premeditation and malice of forethought?
Yes.
Did you, on or about that same date in Moscow, Idaho, kill and murder Kaylee Gonzalez, a human being?
Yes.
And did you do that willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, and with premeditation and malice of forethought?
Yes.
And did you, on that same date in Moscow, Idaho, kill and murder Xana Kernodle, a human being?
Yes.
And did you do that willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice of forethought?
Yes.
And then on or about November 13th, 2022, again in Latah County, Idaho, did you kill and murder Ethan Chapin, a human being?
Yes.
Did you do that willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice of forethought?
Yes.
I would ask the state at this time to provide its recitation of its factual basis had this case gone to trial.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, the organization of the recitation is different than what I think the court and the public may be familiar with from the probable cause affidavit and other documents. The state's evidence, as an overview, would show that back in March of 2022, when the defendant was residing in his parents' residence or was residing back in Pennsylvania, his home state, he purchased online a K-bar knife and sheath with an Amazon gift card that he had purchased shortly prior to the purchase of the knife, sheath, and sharpener. Jumping ahead, the end of June of that year, the defendant, Mr. Kohberger, moved from Pennsylvania to Pullman, Washington, which is right across the state line from Moscow, Idaho, for the purpose of pursuing a PhD in criminal justice at Washington State University. The state's evidence would indicate that beginning July 9th of 2022, Mr. Kohberger's phone began connecting to a cell tower that serves the area of the 1122 King Road residence in Moscow, Idaho. Now, I will acknowledge for the court and all present that there are many residences in that area. It's a dense population of mostly college-related occupants. Between July 9th of 2022 and November 7th, the defendant's phone connected to that particular tower during late night, early morning hours, 10 p.m. to 4 a.m., on approximately 23 times. Now, I will acknowledge also, we do not have evidence that the defendant had direct contact with 1122 or with residents of 1122, but we can put his phone in that area on those times. In the interim, on August 22nd of 2022, Latah County Sheriff's Deputy Darren Duke conducted a traffic stop in the early morning hour or late evening hours, about 11 p.m. On the west side of Moscow, on the Moscow-Pullman Road. This was the traffic stop of Mr. Kohberger's car, which turned out to be a 2015 white Hyundai Elantra with Pennsylvania plates. During the course of the traffic stop, Deputy Duke was able to obtain Mr. Kohberger's name, Bryan Kohberger, his phone number, and his address, which at that point was an apartment address in Pullman. We then moved to the early morning hours of November 13th, 2022. The state's evidence would show that early morning hours on that day, Mr. Kohberger's phone left his Pullman residence, which is an apartment in kind of the central northwest part of Pullman. That phone was then subsequently turned off at approximately 2:54 a.m. and remained off until approximately 4:48 a.m. on Sunday, the 13th of November. The state's evidence would include a trial, video surveillance of a business on the Moscow-Pullman Highway, just across the state line from Moscow. It would show a vehicle matching the description of the defendant's Hyundai Elantra entering Moscow at approximately 3:02 a.m. Compiled surveillance that the investigators put together from businesses and residents then show the defendant's car the white Elantra, as I've described, circling the 1122 King Road area, that neighborhood, starting around 3:30 or so in the morning. Comes into the immediate area of 1122 King Road, which is actually on a dead end, and then leaves several times. And approximately 4:05 that morning, the defense car had entered that area, was leaving, stopped at the intersection of King and Queen Road, did a U-turn, and the state's evidence would show that the defendant's car came back and parked behind and above the 1122 King Road residence. The state believes that its evidence would then show that the defendant entered the residence of 1122 through the kitchen sliding door on the back side of the residence, which is the side of the residence that would face the area above where the defendant's car was parked. Defendant entered the residence, went to the 3rd floor, and with a knife, killed Madison Mogan and Caitlin Gonzalez. The defendant, as he left that room, for whatever reason, ended up leaving, or the sheath for a K-bar knife was left on the bed next to Madison Mogan's body. And I can jump ahead. That sheath was tested by the Idaho State Police Forensic Lab, and single source male DNA was found on the snap of that sheath, as well as blood from both Kaylee and Madison and other trace evidence. But it's important to note single source male DNA was on the snap of that sheath. The state's evidence would show that Xana Knodel was still awake at this time. In fact, had taken a DoorDash order not long before this started. Her room was not on the 3rd floor, it was on the 2nd floor on the west side. As the defendant was either coming down the stairs or leaving, he encountered Xana, and he ended up killing her, also with a large knife. Ethan Chapin, Xana's boyfriend, was asleep in their bedroom, in her bedroom, and the defendant killed him as well with a large fixed blade knife. Each victim suffered multiple wounds. I will state for the record that there is no evidence there was any sexual component or sexual assault on any of the victims. I want to make that clear so there's no speculation. There were 2 other roommates in the house, and they were already asleep. During the course of this, one of those roommates awoke, looked out her door not knowing what was going on, and saw the defendant, who was dressed in black with a black balaclava on, holding some sort of container in his hand. And she saw him leave the house through the direction of the kitchen where that sliding door is that I mentioned before. At approximately 4:20 that morning, so this would have been 15 minutes or so later, the defendant's car is seen on a surveillance camera for 1112 King Road, which is immediately next door to the west of 1122, leaving the area at a high rate of speed. And if the court were to see that, or anybody in this courtroom would see that, you can see the car almost loses control as it makes the corner, heads north, and then turns to go south on Walinta, which is one of the only ways to get out of that part of town. The evidence would show that following that, the defendant in his Elantra drove south of Moscow. We know that he drove on the back roads because there are surveillance cameras on the main highways, Highway 95, that would have picked up the defendant's car if he'd gone that route. And they did not show the defendant's car on that route during the time. So we know that he went through a variety of back roads in very rural, isolated part of Latah County. About 4:48 that morning, the defendant's phone comes back on. And the evidence will show that that phone was located south of Moscow, likely at a side road intersection with Highway 95. From there, the defendant's phone activity tracks it heading back north towards Pullman, Washington, where the defendant lived. About 5:26, starting approximately 5:26, various surveillance cameras in Pullman, Washington pick up the defendant's vehicle as he enters Pullman from the south and heads north and slightly west towards his apartment where he arrived at approximately 5:30 in the morning. Later that morning, Sunday, the 13th of November of 2022, Mr. Kohberger's phone returned to the area of King Road. We don't know exactly what he did, but it returned to that area. It's about 9 o'clock in the morning. He was there for about 10 minutes and then returned to his Pullman residence. About 9:30, the state's evidence will show, evidence taken from the defendant's phone, that he took a selfie of himself on his phone in what appears to be the bathroom of his Pullman apartment with a thumbs up. The defendant's phone then went to the Lewiston-Clarkston Valley, approximately 30 miles south of Moscow and Pullman. And the defendant is actually seen with his car at various businesses down there. This area is the confluence of the Clearwater River and the Snake River. Lewiston is Idaho's seaport. Large bodies of moving water down there. In addition to tracing the defendant's activities, as I've just outlined, on the 13th and leading up to the 13th, the state's evidence will show that following Sunday, November 13th, 2022, business records show that the defendant began searching for a K-bar knife and a K-bar knife sheath, as the state believes, to replace the one that was left at the scene of the murders. The evidence also will suggest that there were at least attempts by the defendant to delete or alter his purchase history on Amazon, where all these transactions had occurred. Later that week, the state's evidence will show that Mr. Kohberger went to what we would call DMV, motor vehicle licensing here in Idaho, in Pullman, to change his car registration from Pennsylvania to Washington. That's of note because Pennsylvania cars do not require a front license plate. The vehicles seen on the surveillance cameras of the defendant's car showed it didn't have a front license plate on it. At the time of the traffic stop by Deputy Duke in August, it was Pennsylvania plate, no front license plate. Mr. Kohberger proceeded to finish his semester of studies at Washington State University and returned to Pennsylvania for the holidays. Law enforcement at this point were aware of Mr. Kohberger, had been accessing information about him, were trying to find him. They located him in Pennsylvania, and they conducted what's called a trash pull. During the nighttime hours, agents of the FBI, who assisted immensely with this case, working with the sanitation department back in this neighborhood in Pennsylvania, took trash that had been set out on the street for collection, sent the contents of that from the Pennsylvania residence of the defendant's parents to the Idaho State Forensic Laboratory, where the lab experts there were able to identify DNA on a Q-tip as coming from the father of the person whose DNA was found on the knife sheath that was next to Madison Mogan's body in the bed. Subsequently, an arrest warrant was issued here in Idaho, and a search warrant was issued in the state of Pennsylvania with the assistance not only of the FBI, but the Pennsylvania State Police. Mr. Kohberger was arrested at his parents' home to return to Idaho. Upon his return to Idaho, a DNA sample was taken from him, and it matched the DNA found on the knife sheath next to Maddie's body at the crime scene. I can tell the court, in public, the weapon itself, the knife, has not yet been recovered. I can tell the court that the defendant's apartment in Pullman was searched, as well as his office. Spartan would be a kind characterization. There was virtually nothing there. Nothing of evidentiary value was found. And of course, we are now talking 6-8 weeks after the time of the killings. In Pennsylvania, the defendant's car was seized, and it was actually pretty much disassembled internally. And it also had been cleaned. There was a bucket of cleaner right beside it. I think we can all look to our own cars, you know, in those compartments in the doors. We try to keep them clean where you put stuff. There's always some degree of crud in there. They were spotless. The defendant's car had been meticulously cleaned inside. And the state would present to the jury that That was part of the defendant's plan in covering up this. The defendant has studied crime. In fact, he did a detailed paper on crime scene processing when he was working on his pre-doctorate degrees, and he had that knowledge and skill. So, Your Honor, at the end, the state submits the evidence that I've given just a quick overview of, and that to present in court would consume weeks, which the state is prepared to do and has been prepared to do, would show that as the defendant has just admitted and pleaded guilty on November 13th, 2022, excuse me, Mr. Kohberger entered the residence of 1122 King Road in Moscow, Idaho. He did that with the intent to kill. We will not represent that he intended to commit all of the murders that he did that night, but we know that that is what resulted, and that he then killed intentionally, willfully, deliberately, with premeditation, and with malice forethought, Manny Mogan, Kaylee Gonzalez, Ethan Chapin, and Santa Cruz. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, based on the state's proffer and importantly, based upon defendant's explicit admission to committing these crimes, the court finds there is a factual basis. Therefore, with respect to count 1, burglary, felony, how do you plead, Mr. Kohberger, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
As to count 2, murder in the first degree, as it relates to the murder of Madison Mogan, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
As to count 3, as it relates to murder in the first degree for the murder of Kaylee Gonzalez, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
As to count 4, the first degree murder of Xana Kernodle, a human being, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
As to count 5, the first degree murder of Ethan Chapin, a human being, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
Right. The court will find that the defendant understands the nature of the charges and each offense and the possible consequences to him of his guilty plea. The court finds that there is a factual basis for the plea and that finds the defendant believes the plea to be in his best interest. I find that the plea was given freely, voluntarily, and was intelligently made. I accept the plea. I direct that it be entered. I'll continue the matter for sentencing in this case. I think it was mentioned on the call Monday afternoon, the defense wishes to waive a pretrial investigation. Is that accurate?
Yes, Your Honor.
The state also?
Yes, Your Honor, the state does not believe pre-sentence investigation is needed given the evidence that is available. We want to, though, make sure that all of the victims have the opportunity to make the court at sentencing.
Absolutely. And certainly both the state and the defense may present whatever sentencing memorandum and other documents you wish me to consider. The victims will be given an opportunity to provide the statements that they wish to at sentencing. Do we need more than 1 full day for sentencing?
I do not believe so, Your Honor. Obviously we have numerous victims, and we have victims who share unique perspectives on this, and we want to make sure that they all have time to express their feelings to the court. But I believe that if we can start perhaps 8:30 or so in the morning, that we should be able to complete it all in 1 day.
Defense agree with that in terms of the time frame?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. So as it happens, we have some time reserved in this case in July and August. The week of July 22nd is available. I don't know if that's too soon for the parties or the next week, the week of August 4 is available. Any preference?
Your Honor, we're prepared as soon as the court wants to schedule it.
The state, I believe, would be prepared on the 22nd. Right. We've told the victims' families that we're looking at approximately those dates.
All right. So because of the plan to bring in so many jurors to fill out questionnaires, I had ordered that no other trials could take place in this courthouse the week of July 22nd. And so we will use that in terms of the sentencing date, because of what I'm sure will be the significant interest of the media and the public, and the logistics that will be required to make that happen. Without trials going, it'll be a lot easier to do that. So let's pick that week. Why don't we pick July 23rd with the idea that if for some reason we don't finish, we could continue into the 24th. We'll start at 9 in the morning. Does that give your team enough time, Sandra? 9 in the morning? All right. Any concerns with that date?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
No, sir.
All right. Any reason why I should not rescind the non-dissemination order at this time?
You're right. I think that given the history of this case, it would be best if that remained in place through sentencing. So we have time to make sure there's the ability to completely answer questions. That would be the state's preference and recommendation.
Would have no objection for the order to remain in place through sentencing.
All right. I will, at this point, the idea to keep it until sentencing, which time it would be withdrawn in order to give the parties the space and time to prepare to meet what I'm sure will be the deluge of media requests. That's at least my preliminary decision at this point. We can always revisit if it seems to be, for some reason, I should. That said, obviously, I don't think the defendant, a bond was ever set for the defendant. Were it would be revoked. The prior order allowing him to come in civilian clothes is revoked, given his plea and no longer the presumption of innocence. And in fact, now the actual conviction for the crimes. He will continue to be held at the jail pending sentencing. Is there anything else today?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
I assume that the trial date will be vacated and those 4 jurors will be released.
The trial will be vacated, and I'm sure that the jury commissioner will get word to those that receive their summons that they won't be required to attend. So that said, again, if you would all please wait for the parties and the victims' families and others to leave the courtroom before you do, I would appreciate it. And with that, we're adjourned. All right, please.
Okay. I do have some opinions on this, especially after watching that. I know that the Gonzalez family posted on Facebook, they wanted people to email or contact the judge about this plea deal. If he wasn't going to even acknowledge those requests, I don't feel like it should have even been mentioned in this. Now, I may be wrong, and I may have looked at that as a dig to that family. And it may be unjustified, but what do you all think? And right now it's showing like the outside. I'm kind of keeping it pulled up just in case the family does speak. But I know it was split. Some victims' family members was good with this plea deal. Some were not. And I've done told y'all, DP, even if somebody gets it, you never know when that state is going to change. And their law, just like with the Charles Manson case, but the fact that he could get less than what is asked is very concerning to me. I'm sure this case, you know what? I hope it isn't. I wish they would do that differently. Study it, fine. Don't make documentaries, don't make movies and put his actual name in there. From here on out, he should be known as dirt, in my opinion. Just dirt. That's the problem. making idols out of people like this when they're nothing but evil is a problem. If they want to study him, fine. But don't ever use his name again. I think after today, he shouldn't mean nothing. Or especially after the 22nd when they sentence him. He ought to rot away in a prison. And I know this bothers me, but, and nobody should ever know his name. If the families want to do a movie, they ought to change his name. That, or a documentary. That's their right. But I think that they ought to never put his name back out there. He should disappear like the fog. Just go away. And again, I don't see what the point was of mentioning the emails that he received that he didn't look at. To me, that's kind of seemed like a dig. Yes, Xana Canodal and Kayla Gonzalez's family were not happy. Yep. And I get it. I do. I think he should have, we are not owed nothing. We may want to know what the cause of this was, but at the very least, he should have to tell these family members why he did what he did, if they want to know. And I know some do. And by not making him do that, they spend the rest of their life wondering why. The only thing after the sentencing hearing that I want to hear his name again is in news stories saying prison justice was carried out. Me too, Michelle. Me too. We know he studied these people, idolized. What was his name? BTK. So I know, Crystal, but that's what criminologists do. They study them, but they can do it without putting their name out there. Is my point. That's the reason we know about BTK. That's the reason that we know about Jeffrey Dahmer. That's the reason that their name will be sketched into history, is because they put it out there. You can study something and not give the person's real name. Don't give them that celebrity status that they get. These families, this is how I see it. These families shouldn't have to look at his face. After this sentencing, they should not have to hear his name put in documentaries about what he did to their children, to their family members. As far as his name, it should be just wiped off the face of the earth. Heidi, that's sad. And see, something's going on. Let's see. Yeah, there's no sound on the TV yet, so I'm just wondering if any of the family speaks. Since technically they ain't got a gag order over them no more. Another thing is, and I can't say as I blame them, because I probably wouldn't come out either if my son did that. I know, oh Lordy, I can't even imagine. But his family hasn't really said, no, he was a great person. He would never do this. We never heard that from them. It says victims' families leaving the court. I'm kind of wondering if any of them say anything. Guess not. Agree. Way too many people glorifying serial killers. That's the truth. And to me, Even he don't seem remorseful. He could have pled guilty a long time ago if that's what he wanted to do. This has been drug out for what, 2 years? Him being in cell. That's what people were saying. Well, he's going to be in a cell, all right. And that's another thing. Don't protect them. Don't put them in there and start protecting them. Nobody was protecting these kids that were actually trying to do something with their life other than go around taking other people's lives like this jerk did. Stick them in there and let them sink or swim. That's how I feel about it. And sadly, I know there's going to be people that do lives saying they still think he's innocent. He's innocent. That's what we're going to see that. And for those people, he stood there and said he did it. Missed me with that garbage. No one protected these 4 kids. That's exactly right, Michelle. Exactly. Stick them in there and let them sink or swim. And I got a feeling he'd sink. Kohberger's family had no response to this and said they just wanted privacy and will not comment on it. Yep. And I mean, I don't think people need to be out here harassing his family either, because they're not guilty of something that he did. We've all got some sorry family members somewhere in our family. They shouldn't be blamed for what he did. But I mean, we're going to have YouTubers that will be die hard. He was innocent. And I'm sorry. Miss me with that. The man just said he did it. I'd be livid if this were my child. I would too. I was sitting here while I was watching that and seeing his little cold look on his face as he guilty. Yes. Yes. And I was thinking, how would I react if I was in that courtroom? And I'm going to tell you right now, I'd be in jail. I mean, and the knife where they got the DNA, single source DNA refers to DNA evidence obtained from a single identifiable source, meaning the DNA profile is from only one individual. So that's what they done when they arrested him, means it only come from him. If you remember, his attorney said he was innocent at the beginning. Yeah, they said it for 2 years up until the other day, the 30th. Innocent, innocent, innocent. You got people doing live streams going over why they think he's innocent. And people have a right. But now this man has came out and said that he did it. So I don't think people need to be out here, because we know how with CW, how it went. You still got people till today saying he was innocent. He's got his own little fan club of sick, twisted people. And I see why these family members are upset, because he's going to be the same way, y'all. I don't know how those 3 women could sit there behind him knowing what he did to those. Me either, Michelle. It's horrifying to know that we've got people in this world that are that evil. And I don't understand why they didn't get him on premeditated first degree. I can't imagine being a criminal defense attorney knowing I thought it was coming back on. Knowing I'm defending a person who is guilty. Nope, me neither. It's very disturbing. Very. There was like sound that came on for a minute, so I thought, well, maybe the family's going to speak. I do imagine that the family has a lot to say. I'd say they do. We know Kaylee Gonzalez's family has been very upset. I would not be able to live with myself. Getting another phone call already. Let 3 go. Oh, okay, Michelle. Thank you, honey, for being here. I was just going to give it a few more minutes to see if the family spoke, because I imagine they want to get him out of there before they actually have the family to speak. Because you never know the reaction of the family. But I mean, like I said, if he does life without the possibility of parole consecutively on all 4 counts, then yeah, he's in there for life. But I mean, they plainly said the judge, that's just asking for the max. The judge can actually give him less. And if that happens to me, oh my goodness, that would be worst case scenario. In case anyone looks at my above comment that just started watching, it was about Diddy, not BK. Yeah. I'll put it up here so everybody, if they watch the replay, can actually see that. Yeah, Diddy that's proof right there. People cannot get enough time. But it don't look like the family's going to speak, and I understand it. They're probably tore all to pieces. But I've got things I got to get took care of today. Well, just as soon as I say that, they show this. Dude, your mic ain't turned on. It looked like they were going to come and speak out here. Or somebody was. I don't know. But it is on Long Crime if anybody wants to watch it. I was not going out in the middle of that mess. Oh. It says coming up press conference. I wonder when that is. It looks like they may be going to speak, you all. Or somebody is. Give me just a minute. I'll be right back. Okay. I am back. Well, this is on Long Crime, you all, and it's all over YouTube. I'm going to get off here. I found sometimes that it ain't best for me to give a whole lot of my opinions when something first happens, because I'm an opinionated lady. And sometimes my opinion is more emotion than it is anything. And but now I do stand behind what I said. This plea, at the end of the day, this plea deal, it is confusing on where I stand with it, because I know that if they went to trial, they would have to endure that, and there's no guarantee. And we know he's guilty now. He admitted to it. But also, if he got the DP, say he went to trial and he got the DP, if the state law changed, then it would be dropped anyway. But then we also know that the judge ain't bound to give the maximum sentence that's in the plea deal, and could give it less. Now, do I think on these charges he will give less? Personally, I don't think so. And I hope not. I hope not. But there's always that possibility too. But at the very minimum, I do believe that he should have to tell why he done it. And in the words of the Gonzalez family, they should get to know when the beginning of the end was. Because I don't think he did this on the fly. It was premeditated, had to be, or he would have had no idea what he was walking into. And again, I don't understand why it's just in the first degree and not premeditated in the first degree. I don't get that. But I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a judge. I'm just a country girl that's looking at this for what I can understand out of it. And like I have said already, everything that I've stated earlier has been drawn from very public sources. Go check it out for yourself, research it for yourself, and gather your own opinions. These are my opinions. And I don't normally comment on whether somebody's guilty or innocent. But in this case, he admitted to it. Therefore, he is guilty. So I don't think we as YouTubers should be out here defending this piece of crap, because he did what he did. And I'll stand on that 10 toes down. I love you all. It takes zero effort to be a good human being. You've actually got to try to be a bad one.
I know you told your friend you're not okay, and tell me what's wrong and why you never said you felt that way. And guess you're trying to stay strong and fake a smile until I look away. But I've known you too long, it hurts to watch your blue eyes fade to gray as you fade away, as you fade away.
Yeah, I'm about to fade away, cause every time I wake up I feel like it's Monday. Something's going wrong with all the chemicals up in my brain. All of a sudden I don't look at anything the same way. Got a buildup of my thoughts sitting in an ashtray. I'm sorry that I'm so inconvenient, okay. Just let me be me and I'll stay out of your way. I can see the way you look at me, I'm such a disgrace. I never really asked to be brought into this place. You wanna love me? Well then baby I have a taste. All the highs and the lows, no you'll never be the same. I don't really wanna hurt you, but I can't control the pain. If you're sticking by my side, maybe we could be okay. Okay, maybe you could be the change I need today. I promise that I've never felt this way. I really hope that you will choose to stay through all the pain.
I know you told your friend you're not okay, and tell me what's wrong and why you never said you felt stay strong and fake a smile until I look away. But I've known you too long, it hurts to watch your blue eyes fade to gray as you fade away. As you fade away. As you fade away.
Like nothing I found, my mind overwhelmed. I think that I'm broken, but I hope you can't help. I know I'm not perfect, but some days I feel bored or worthless. Baby, you make me feel nervous. If I still have you, I have purpose. It's all worth it.
I know you told your friend you're not okay, and tell me what's wrong and why you never said you felt that way. I guess you're trying to stay strong and fake a smile until I look away. But I've known you too long, it hurts to